So in Romania's recent presidential election was annulled by their Supreme Court over supposed intel that the Russians were involved in, was supporting, if I pronounce his name right, Georgescu's presidential run. In Romania, they have, I think, two rounds of voting. There's a first round and a second round. I think it's similar to France, where they have multiple parties run, and then the top two parties then have a runoff election where they go to the second round. So in the first round, he got more votes than any other candidate. It says that he got, how much? How many votes did he get? 22.94, so just about 23% of the vote. The runner-up got 19.18% of the vote. So what happened is that there were elements of the Romanian government that came forward with intel saying that there were irregularities with the voting, that the Russians were backing, Russian intelligence was backing Georgescu's presidential run, and that there was election interference. They're alleging that this was by Russia. So there's a number of problems with this. First of all, this is a government, and it's governments lie. We've seen this all over the place. We see it here in the United States, and we see it abroad. Russia does have a very large intelligence network. In fact, when the Soviet Union collapsed, from what I've read, I'm not an expert in this, but from what I've read, that is that Russia, of all the things that they had to cut, they cut their military budget, they cut obviously their space program, all those things, but their intel was the one area they didn't cut because the intel was sort of the spearhead of leading the country, the former Soviet Union and the newly formed Russian Federation. Putin is a good example. I mean, he's from that. He was a former KGB agent that is now the president of Russia, and basically sort of a soft dictatorship, if you will. Governments don't have a good track record of being honest because there's so much politics, and because you always get these entrenched elites that want to stay in power, and they got their buddies and their intel and their justice departments. We've seen it here in the United States. We call it the swamp, and it's no different in other countries. So yes, Russia does have a vast intelligence network. They would have an interest in getting Romania to exit out of NATO and the EU, because Romania is one of the big military in terms of manpower, in terms of boots on the ground. Romania and Poland are actually the two biggest that are on Russia's border. Now, that being said, we've seen this before, the idea of Russian propaganda, Russian interference with elections. There was a Mueller report here in the United States that turned out to be a big nothing burger. It was just used to slow Trump down with his agenda the first time. The only thing they found was some Facebook ads. And there's a lot of accusations that, things that are political that aren't going the way the establishment, they said it's quote unquote Russian propaganda, like the Hunter Biden laptop, for example. Well, as it turns out, it's real, despite what several intel and intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies on the federal level signed off. They signed off that this is Russian propaganda, but as it turns out, it is real, and Hunter Biden did commit a whole bunch of crimes. So, should we believe this? Should we not? As far as I'm concerned, this is speculation. I have my doubts on any claim that's being made. I'm not saying that the Russians interfered, and I'm not saying that they didn't. But just keep an open mind about this, that these are governments, they have vested interests. Just because, there probably is a segment in Romania that doesn't want to have any conflict or anything to do with what's going on in Ukraine. That isn't to say that there wasn't Russian interference or vice versa, just because, Russia has a vested interest and knocking Romania out of NATO doesn't mean that they interfered, although I wouldn't put that past them. So anyway, I'll put a link in the description below the article, and you can make up your own mind.